Welcome back to Cryptos Are Us. I'm George. We're all George. So happy Friday. Today is a big inflation reading day. So let's talk about why today's inflation number make a strong case for Bitcoin. That's right. So let's talk about that. Let's talk about everything else that's going on in the world today with U.S. markets, with crypto, with Bitcoin, and everything else. All right, let's do it, guys. Let's do it. Welcome. Good morning. Bitcoin is starting out a little bit lower than yesterday, right around 85,200. So overnight, it does seem like Asia or Europe sold off a little bit in anticipation for inflation reading today, or maybe a little scared over tariff stuff. A little sell-off. But this morning, we are starting out a little bit more in the red. Not too bad. I actually expected a little bit worse. But, knock on wood, the market is just getting started. Because we did get PCE reading, core headline inflation, showing that inflation is definitely going up. Okay. And it's going up more than expected, hotter than expected. So just a tad more. So, we kind of expected this already. CPI already came out showing that we were going up. So it was anticipated that PCE would also show that we're going up, right? But it just came up a little bit more than expected. So that's the thing. So maybe Wall Street won't freak out over this. Oh, someone said, there's an earthquake in Thailand. I'm sorry to hear that. I don't know if that had to do with Bitcoin, though. Maybe. But I'm sorry to hear that. But yeah, I was going to say, we kind of expected this to happen. Maybe Wall Street won't be panicked and won't panic dump today. We are starting on the red, but it's not that bad. Actually, I thought it would be worse, but it's not that bad. So maybe we flip around. Kind of like yesterday. Yesterday we started on the red, and then everything started coming back up during the day. We may have one of those days. We'll see. People are still talking about the tariffs. A lot of news, including automakers. The automakers are struggling. Yesterday, Tesla had a pretty good day, because Wall Street is betting that Tesla's going to have the best time because they do have gigafactories in the U.S. But still, we don't know. We don't know how it's going to be. Like Ferrari actually yesterday said that they're going to increase every Ferrari price by 10%. Not by 25%, by 10%. I don't know how others are going to do. So I don't know if it's like everyone's going to just raise their price by 10%. But I do think used cars will get more valuable. But, I heard like VW, Audi, Porsche, they're all the same brand, but they're struggling. VW has no manufacturing at all in the U.S., so all of their products are going to get very, very expensive, very, very fast. So a lot of these guys are trying to figure it out really, really quickly. But going back to this whole problem that we're facing with inflation, with irresponsible spending, with endless printing, with money being debt, and our deficit. Look at this headline. The U.S. debt burden may top second World War peak in coming years. It's getting out of control. Right. Basically, as a country, we don't even have a debt ceiling anymore. We voted to remove that, I think, until this year. And our debt spending is crazy. Just interest payments alone on our bonds is over $1 trillion now a year. Just that. We can't even afford that. We have to issue more bonds just to pay the interest on bonds that we owe. Think about that. It's a never-ending vicious cycle. And that's why things are being done, right? Or supposedly being done to try to fix this with Doge, with other cuts, with, bring rates down, and there's a lot of things being done, right? But this makes a very strong case, very, very, very strong case for Bitcoin. This is the exact reason why Bitcoin was created. A lot of you guys still don't understand why Bitcoin is important and why it was created. It's created for the very, very thing. Distrust in people in power, distrust in banks and central banks in particular, and you gotta take that power away from people and put power in, basically, in code, something that can't be, changed due to human nature or due to greed, right? Everything with Bitcoin is pure and controlled by code, and you can't apply policy to it. You can't artificially inflate it. You can't just do whatever you want and increase it. Just increase it on a whim, so to speak, right? It doesn't need to be bailed out. That's why Bitcoin is where it is now. Created out of thin air in 16 years ago when it was worth nothing, and today is worth $85,000, and not too long ago it was worth $109,000. But that's why so many, including people in our Senate, in our Congress, even our president, that believes that's why it's so important to have a Bitcoin reserve. And as a nation, we may one day use that Bitcoin reserve to pay back half of the debt, which is around $36 trillion now. By the time Bitcoin gets to where it can pay off half the debt, who knows? It might be like 50 trillion then, maybe even more. But Bitcoin keeps on going up because it's scarce, and because of all those things I mentioned, you can't just mint more or create more out of thin air. You can't apply policy to it. You could trust it because you don't have greedy politicians that's making decisions. That's how important Bitcoin is. And that's why so many are loading up. And I've been showing you guys how even with the current price distraction, whales and BlackRock and everyone in between are loading up behind the scenes. Look at this. Even yesterday, you know how I mentioned how we kind of, U.S. market kind of opened in red. Bitcoin had some turbulence. Even with yesterday, the ETF inflow was still close to $100 million. Yesterday, a big day for Fidelity. BlackRock took a breather yesterday, but almost $100 million from Fidelity. So there are a lot, even on Wall Street, they are buying back. They're buying back slowly. They see this as an opportunity. Those that sold a lot, that sold over the last few months, they're starting to creep back in. They're buying back. They realize things are oversold. We're definitely in an oversold situation. Bitcoin is still the asset that you want to hold. Nothing still outperforms it. Even right now, you look at year-to-date performance, you look at 2-year performance, you look at 5-year performance. It is the greatest hedge against inflation based on performance, right? Because, again, of all those things I just mentioned. And this is the first cycle that we have so many things happen. Not only do we have the intro of ETFs, we have Bitcoin Reserve as a nation. We're going to have 30 plus states introduce Bitcoin reserves. Eventually, it'll probably get to all 50 states. These are all things that never, ever, ever, ever happened before. Ever happened before. These are all very bullish things, adding to the fundamentals. And the reserve of Bitcoin's supply on exchanges have crashed to a 7-year low too. And that number will continue to go lower as these big boys and ETFs and whales keep on accumulating. There's only so much to go around. They may be buying OTC, but again, there's a set supply and there's only so much circulating. Eventually that runs out and dries up. You know, that's how it works. Again, it's not like fiat where you just type in some numbers in a computer and magically there's just more numbers or more debt that could be forgiven. That's not how it works with Bitcoin. You just can't do that. That's why it's so precious. That's why it's the most valuable, arguably the most valuable network in existence. And Bitcoin is the reward system on top of it. All right, outside of that, today we also have a huge, because it's the last Friday of the month. Man, this month flew by. We're almost in April now. We're almost in April. This month flew by. But we have a big options and futures expiration today. Usually, when we do, we have some volatility. Okay. Look at this headline. Will Bitcoin soar above $90,000? Who knows? Who knows? Maybe. Right now, we're at 85, under 86. Seems like we have to make a big move. Maybe. I see people say in the live chat that we filled a gap. Another gap is filled. Maybe after the options expirations, and if the U.S. market turns around, we'll be right back up to 87, 88, and then 90,000 is not too far off. And plus, recently, I showed this. One of the most reliable buy indicators or buy signals for Bitcoin has flashed. Now, this doesn't mean it's immediate. Okay? It takes months. This is the hash ribbon signal. And I showed this before. The prior times, it doesn't happen very often. Last time it happened, it was back around July of 2024, and the previous time was July of 2023. When it flashed by, we waited like a couple of months, and then boom, Bitcoin went up. Same thing. The low point of 2022, when Bitcoin was below 20,000 and it was like 15,000, it also flashed by. The last 3 times it flashed by, it wasn't immediate, but soon afterwards, Bitcoin went up on a huge run. And it just flashed by now. So it doesn't mean that it's going like go on a huge run tomorrow. But this all correlates, if we had to wait a few months, it all correlates to roughly around May or June when we have another FOMC meeting. We may get another Fed cut. We may get quantitative easing when the liquidity injection starts. It all lines up perfectly. But it also lines up with the fact that we may have found that local bottom like the previous times. And the selling has stopped. And now we're building up from that base. So, looking forward to that. And if you want to zoom out, if you want to actually take a second and look at Bitcoin over the last 3 cycles, you'll realize that it just always does the same thing. Okay? It does the same thing. Every cycle, after we have a bottom, we have a recovery. Then we have like the parabolic, or aka the banana zone, which in this case is labeled up only. And then we have a bear market. Then we start over. We have a bottom point, then we recover, then we have a banana zone, then we have a bear market. That's how the 4-year cycle works, right? We're in that up only, the parabolic year right now. So whatever is happening right now, we will get through it. And then we'll find a peak. And then maybe we go through another bear market. Or maybe we won't this time because things have changed this cycle. Or maybe we have a very, very, very short crypto winter or bear market after the cycle. But every single time it happens the same way. If you look at prior cycles, also the same thing. Even in the final year, the banana zone year, the up only year, it wasn't just a straight up. It wasn't a moonshot to the moon, so to speak. We had a lot of dips, a lot of volatilities. We were climbing the mountain, but still a lot of volatility along the way, kind of like right now. So, uh, bottom line is stick with Bitcoin. But not just Bitcoin. I saw this too. NASDAQ seeks SEC approval to list Grayscale Spot Avalanche ETF. The only bad thing about this is, okay, whenever Grayscale wants to convert one of their trusts to an ETF, we have seen this playbook before. Generally speaking, it's not that good because they just start dumping because all of their prior investors that hold those trusts want to sell and they haven't been able to sell for years. So we saw that with Bitcoin. Grayscale's Bitcoin ETF was selling forever. Their ETH ETF, I think, is still selling. And if I think this is going to happen, I mentioned Avalanche is an American-based project. They're doing a lot of things, and they're probably going to get their ETF. But the only thing I don't like is how Grayscale is listing. I'm not looking forward to that. But their most popular game, Off the Grid, which has millions, almost I think tens of millions of players, they're going to be launching their L1 and their own token soon. Next week. I wonder how that's going to do. Web3 companies or games been having a really hard time bringing gamers into Web3 and introducing Web3 features. So right now, this game operates just like a normal Web2 AAA game. But once they start layering in the Web3 features, will that turn people off? Or will this be the very first successful AAA game to lure people in? You know, that's the thing. I don't know. It'll be interesting. And Avalanche, not just games, although they're dominated by games, but they also have RWA. This project, Back Finance, is the RWA play. Sort of like Ondo. They have tokens based on Coinbase stock and S&P 500 now. I don't know if this is available in the U.S. There's a lot of Ondo tokenized stocks that are not available in the U.S., but, you know, Avalanche is more than games. They have a lot of other things going on. RWA is one of them, so that's pretty cool. And then SEC yesterday dismissed more cases. They dismissed a case against Crypto.com and against Kraken. So I didn't even know they had open cases against both exchanges, but they decided to just clear it. No more. So again, SEC is turning a corner, turning very, 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 or at least I argue they're turning very bullish, but you can argue that maybe they're just starting over. They're dismissing all the active cases. They're going to come up with a new framework and then decide if they should then go after some of these guys, right? But right now, they're just dismissing every crypto case there is. And I see that's very, very positive. Yeah. So part of the changing landscape in America that's very, very pro crypto. And that's awesome. That's awesome. All right. Let's see. Things are improving a little bit. NASDAQ is improving a little bit, so that's not bad. Bitcoin is still where it is. Let's do some Q&A. All right. Sorry about that. Roulette wheel. What do you think about PM gold and silver? What does the PM stand for? Or are you just asking about gold and silver? Oh, price movement? Is that what you're talking about? I really don't think of anything of them. Their price movement is like watching paint dry. So it's not my thing. Let's see. Mitch, I appreciate that. I saw Charles Hoskinson say that he's trying to create a stablecoin on Cardano, and that's coming up soon. So it seems like everyone's trying to come out with stablecoin. That's like the hot thing now. Every project's trying to come out with a stablecoin. I don't know. I mean, it just seems like it's easier to embrace USDT or USDC rather than come out with your own. But I could see the appeal because you can make a lot of money with the fees. But, you know. Larry says, what do you think about Link? I like Link. I think Link is one of the most underrated projects. Not a whole lot of people think they're sexy. They're not really a sexy project, but very important. And plus they are American based and they're just so vital. They're so vital to so many projects. So I like Chainlink. But they get very boring at times. Like they just don't move at all. And then all of a sudden they do. So I like them. Locked in, hidden gems of 2025. Locked in at this point, everything's a hidden gem. You don't need to look for new hidden gems. All the prior big caps from 2021, even the new ones that came out recently, they're all down still like 80%, 90% from their high. You don't need new hidden gems. Alts are still way, way, way off from their previous high. We're not even talking about making a new high after hitting the previous high. So there's no need to look for new hidden gems. Dennis Peters, again, red doesn't make a strong case for Bitcoin because you can't judge Bitcoin on a day-to-day basis. You got to judge it on a year or cycle to basis. Expand your time horizon. It's that simple. If you could make money on Bitcoin every single day because it only goes up every single day, you would be a billionaire already. You would be a centibillionaire. Everyone, in fact, that's been holding for 7, 8 years would be a trillionaire already if that's how it worked. Obviously, that's not how it works. So don't expect Bitcoin to go up every single day. So I know you don't think that, so why would you make a comment like that? What do you think about Aptos? I'm neutral on Aptos. I don't really hear much about Aptos. They're very similar to Sui, created by ex-Facebook guys, using the same kind of code, move. I just don't hear a lot of developments on Aptos. I think their TVL is growing. I'm sure there are useful dApps. I just don't hear a lot about them. Douglas, I don't know if you're trolling. Hopefully you are. And second of all, don't at me. What do you think about ICP? I'm not a fan of ICP. Why don't you like ETH? I have nothing against ETH. ETH is like Apple back in the day, but in a worse position. ETH was a solo chain that had all the activity because they had no competition. But that's simply not the case anymore. There are a lot of chains. They're all competition, and some of them are doing quite well. So that's why ETH can't possibly do as well as before, simply because there's so much competition, unlike 2021. It's kind of like Apple. When Apple was by itself, before Samsung got big, they dominated the smartphone world. Now, they only control 50% of the market because of Samsung. That's just how it is. Do you like Seamless Protocol? I don't know too much about them. A few people asking about Avalanche. I think this one could be big from Avalanche. Next Monday. I don't know if this will move the needle, I should say, for Avalanche. But it'll be really interesting to see if a Web2, Web3 project can actually bring gamers into Web3. How do you feel about XRP according to Larry? I think they're in a really good position. Recently, they've been stuck between like this $2, $2.50 range, around there. But they're really good position. Now they have no ceiling because of the SEC, working with administration, and Ripple has a huge treasury, I mean, they're in a good position. Skipping stones, you're welcome. You're welcome. You know, I haven't shown my educational video about XRP in a long time. I have to protect it because I have the only copy available. And people get riled up when I show it. So I may have to show it today. Wow. Trump pardons Nikola founder Trevor Milton in securities fraud case. Why? Why? This guy, from what I know, was total fraud. You know, saying Nikola, the company, you know, I think they were doing trucks or something like that, and he was hyping up how, you know, they had all these like long range trucks and they were going to be awesome, and took in all this money and basically misused it, and they had no product at all. They had a deal with GM, I think, and then GM pulled out. Like it sounded like it was a total disaster. I really don't know why he pardoned him. And plus, this guy is like a competitor to Elon and Tesla. Kind of weird. Kind of weird. Yeah. Something strange about that. Charlie says we need quantitative easing before alts pump. Exactly right. You know, I've talked about that weeks ago. Seems like a lot of people don't quite believe it or understand it, but it's needed. We need that capital injection, and that's also when all markets like soar. Right. The last time it happened was back right around August, September of 2024. That's when things turned around. We found a bottom, and everything started going up. Things turn around, right? I think it's going to happen again this year, and I think it's very soon. We're heading into April, so it's not like we have to wait 6 months or 12 months for that. No, I think it's going to happen sometime either in May or June, because we have 2 more FOMC meetings coming up, one in early May and one in mid-June. I think it's going to happen in one of those times. That's when it starts. So it's not like, it's the end of the year. No, I think it's going to come very soon. When markets come roaring back, that's when I think everything will start coming back full force. Bitcoin, all the alts, bull season continues on. I work at a drag strip. This is double barrel photography. Seen a plat go 150 plus. I thought they were like limited at 150 or even like lower than that. I didn't think they could even go that fast. But I have no doubt. I mean, a plaid can do a quarter mile in like 9 something, like 9.4 or 9.2 as a stock car. If it could do that, there's no reason why. And it does it at like 100. It traps at like 130 something. So I think it could do 150 easily. Yeah, today might not be turning around. I was hoping it was like yesterday, kind of turn around, but inflation reading today scaring off a lot of people. See, the problem is, in case you guys are wondering, obviously inflation is no good, but inflation going upwards makes it really hard for Powell to cut the rate, the Fed fund rate, and that's a problem. We want him to cut. So this is going to delay things. It's going to make it so that basically in May, there's no chance of it. So then we have to wait until June. So that's when quantitative easing probably happens, in June. But we'll see. All right, guys. I'll let you guys go and get your Friday back. Today's inflation numbers and just a gentle reminder of how we got here and our debt and everything else that's been happening shows why Bitcoin is so important. And to stay strong, stay focused, and continue to hold on DCA. Zoom out. When in doubt, zoom out. Know that we go through this all the time. We go through stale periods. We go through consolidation periods. We go through rough times. But because Bitcoin is pure, it's not controlled by greedy politicians or countries or central banks. We always find a footing and we continue forward. So that's why Bitcoin is the one to hold. All right, guys, smash it a like, subscribe to the channel. I will see you guys later. I will be traveling next week, so my schedule is going to be very, very off. So we'll see. But yeah, I'll try to put out videos, but it's going to be off next week. I'll let you guys know. But enjoy the rest of today, and we'll see what happens. And here is the most educational video on Ripple and XRP ever created. Enjoy.
What do you think about Ripple?
Well, I mean, I think it's too centralized, but I definitely want to meet Chris Larson.